Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, let me thank my colleagues, Congressman McGovern, Jones, Woolsey, Waters, and Honda, for their efforts to bring the war in Afghanistan to a swift and safe end. Mr. Speaker, I'm here this morning to remind my colleagues that there is no military solution in Afghanistan. It is time to bring our troops home and make sure that we leave no permanent military bases. And while many and a growing number of my colleagues have come to this conclusion, there are still those who claim that Afghanistan is going well and that we should stay there indefinitely. Well, we're gathered here this morning to give some real and important insight into the reality that nothing could be further from the truth. We're here to discuss very important revelations brought to light by a brave Army officer, Colonel Daniel Davis. Colonel Davis has honorably served this country for over a quarter century and has received praise from his commanders for his maturity, determination, and judgment. He recently made the brave decision to release an unclassified account of the war in Afghanistan after witnessing the huge gap between what the American public was being told about progress in Afghanistan and the dismal situation on the ground. Declassifying the national intelligence estimate on Afghanistan is a necessary step so that our policy is based on accurate information. Mr. Speaker, I would like to submit this article written by Colonel Davis into the Congressional Record. It was published this past Sunday in the Armed Forces Journal. In this article, may I insert this into the record, Mr. Speaker?
Without objection.
Thank you. In this article, and I quote, Colonel Davis asks, how many more men must die in support of a mission that is not succeeding and behind an array of more than 7 years of optimistic statements by United States senior leaders in Afghanistan? No one expects our leaders to always have a successful plan, but we do expect, and the men and women, I must add, who do the living, fighting, and dying, deserve to have our leaders tell us the truth about what's going on. Mr. Speaker, the American people deserve to know the truth after spending the past decade on failed military strategies, which has cost us over $450 billion in direct funding. And the costs, of course, have been even greater in injuries, lives lost, and the trillions of dollars we will need to spend in long-term care for our veterans, including hospitals, clinics, job training, post-traumatic stress disorder treatment, housing assistance, and homeless services. But we must spend these resources for our veterans. The American people, though, are sick and tired of these endless wars. Fully 2/3 of Americans support ending combat operations in Afghanistan in 2013, and 3 out of 4 Americans favor a speedy withdrawal of all United States troops out of Afghanistan. We are set to spend an additional $88 billion, mind you, $88 billion in Afghanistan over the next year, while domestic cuts in education, health care, roads and bridges, and other essential priorities are sacrificed. We cannot afford an indefinite stay in Afghanistan. We need to ask what we have to show for the past decade of war. Instead of a stable democracy, we have a broken state which is completely dependent on foreign countries for its budget, with rampant corruption and widespread violence. For the 5th straight year, civilian casualties rose in Afghanistan. In fact, 2011 was a record year for Afghan civilians killed. 3,021 Afghan children and women and men were caught in the crossfire between an insurgency and the heavy presence of NATO troops. The reality on the ground in Afghanistan stands in stark contrast to the steady reports of progress we have been hearing from those who seek to maintain a military presence in Afghanistan in 2014 and beyond. It's time to bring our troops home from Afghanistan, not in 2014, not next year, but right now. Congress authorized the use of force in 2011, which I voted against, because it gave the president, any president, a blank check to use force anytime, any place, anywhere in the world for any period of time. We should have had a debate 10 years ago, when Congress failed to consider the implications of giving the Pentagon a blank check in the rush to war. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Colonel Davis for his courage in risking his career to speak out to try to let the American people and their elected representatives understand the true risks we are taking in Afghanistan. To understand what is at stake in Afghanistan, I again call on the Pentagon to declassify the National Intelligence Estimate on Afghanistan so that we can have an informed discussion moving forward. It is time to bring our young men and women home. They have performed valiantly with incredible courage and have done everything we have asked them to do.